PlayStation just came out and said that they want to, quote, revitalize the market for live service games. So their CEO just said, and you may think that's a bit strange because they did just kill one of their biggest live services, Destiny 2. And then they salted the earth whenever they fired hundreds of staff in what's been described as a generational talent loss. Because hey, if a Destiny 3 was ever going to happen, you'd probably need experienced developers to build the thing. Those developers are now gone. And to put it bluntly, Bungie has quite literally been cut in half. Now remember, they're the studio PlayStation paid $3.6 billion for to lead their live service strategy. And its failure is going to be very, very messy. But PlayStation's leadership might have just tipped their hand a little bit. Bungie are a remnant of the old strategy. All of this today comes from a recent Famitsu interview with SIE CEO Hideaki Nishino. Though not directly, it was brought into English by WCCF Tech. Now, most of it covers his own gaming experiences and PlayStation's hardware, right down to teasing handhelds. Hey, handhelds, pretty cool. But the bit that made the headlines was, of course, their plan for live service games. I'm now going to quote him. "We believe that live service games are content that attracts users on a global level, so we want to continue to revitalize the market through both first-party and third-party content." A thrilling statement to be sure. Revitalizing the market. What does that mean and what's it going to look like? After Concord, after The Last of Us Online, after closing Bluepoint for not delivering their God of War live service, after shutting down Dark Outlaw Games before it even teased a single project, and of course now gutting Bungie. Quite a question. Good news though, is I do have some answers. But first, we need to check in on the absolute carnage at Bungie. 292 people. That is how many were just laid off from Bungie's Bellevue headquarters alone, and that's per the legally required WARN notice, and this is for cuts that will be taking effect by July 9th. And to be clear, that isn't everyone. Add the contractors and the out-of-state and international staff, and the real number will climb quite substantially. Now, when Destiny 2 ended service, Bloomberg sources reported that this was coming. Paul Tassi also alleged that 40 to 55% of the studio was in Sony's crosshairs. The reduction in force, as a passive voice-laden social media post called it, came basically down to this. Bungie leadership knew Destiny 2 had disappointed audiences. So, with no new project, they had to reorganize Bungie. And it's grimly funny when you read through a statement like this, you know, the way that they had to reorganize Bungie. What you see is that no one really takes responsibility in this statement. But if we want a better picture of things, I think we shouldn't be looking at what Herman says, we should be taking a look at staff reports. And from staff reports, we know that entire teams have been gutted. Everyone who built Destiny cinematics is gone. Their industry-leading raids and dungeons team are gone. And more still went from the support team at SIE. And those SIE people are likely the ex-Bungie staff that PlayStation pulled into its own operations back in late 2024, where they were basically brought in to support live service stuff. Tassi reports that things are such a mess that actually the contractors who were meant to ship Destiny 2's last hotfix, that they may have actually been cut, thus impacting the hotfixes. But it does make sense, because the people in charge of Bungie aren't in a better state. And if you read the WARN notice, you see it's a decapitation. Title after title marked senior and up across the wider Bungie organization and even Marathon. Co-founder Jason Jones is out as Chief Vision Officer. That was spotted by the Games Post. Though of course, some will likely be cushioned by their stock payments fully vesting. Of course, those are the payments vesting from the sale of Bungie to PlayStation. But even with that, it still is a massive loss of talent and experience at the studio. Jason Schreier reported that studio head Justin Truman is stepping down, and he was only appointed last August whenever Pete Parsons quit. Tassi suggests that his replacement is Poria Torkan, a former VP of Operations and 10-year Bungie veteran. Good luck to them, I suppose. But going back to Truman, well, Truman's last 9 months in the office have, they've more been about delivering the death of Destiny 2 and overseeing the stripping of the studio. Given that grim job, it does make sense that he'd quit. Especially because he wasn't doing it alone. If you take a look at your screen right now, you can see the full statement, but I'll save you the reading. Their statement boils down to 4 words. A reduction was necessary. How much of this round of layoffs was PlayStation's decision? And why would PlayStation gut Bungie, people with live service experience, whenever they also want to revitalize the market for live service? In hindsight, Pete Parsons leaving last August was kind of the watershed moment for Bungie leadership. With one expansion missing sales targets and another heading the same way, PlayStation simply stopped letting Bungie limp on under their own steam. Sony moved in and they decided what came next at a studio that until recently had ran itself. This was all in the works from the start of this year at least. Now, in one way, keeping Bungie active at all is a bit of a show of faith in the staff who are left. They'll seemingly be allowed to build new projects whilst keeping Marathon running. But in another sense, it is far too little, far too late. Bungie's ex-leadership aren't paying the price for their poor choices, or for PlayStation's hands-off attitude that let all of this fester. Of course, the Bungie leadership's leverage has been, say, threat of legal action, the sort of thing that's kept them employed until now, or at least long enough for their stock options to vest. Remember, they're not the people who really built these games, who maybe tried to build, say, the playful community-building prototypes and pitches that have been going around the internet lately, like even the Destiny dating sim. Looks fun. I've seen some people get real thirsty for it, though I imagine most of those things were a bit more serious. And ultimately, it's the staff who've been failed badly enough to, lose their jobs, who are the people actually suffering here. But what about the things that are left? We do have Hulst's line about, quote, resource needs and role within our broader portfolio strategy. We know from reports that Fair Games has been in trouble for years, with leadership leaving and then Insider Gaming reporting that playtests, quote, can't find the fun, which is a bit of a problem when you're making a game. Consider how much experience just walked out the door from Bungie. Senior leadership who have actually delivered projects. Designers who, even though there have been problems with Destiny, ultimately did set the bar for how a game feels to play. That Bungie gunplay is goddamn amazing. Keeping all of those people on would have been logistical chaos. Finding work for everyone to do, managing all of that. And it sure would have been expensive in terms of the old monthly burn rate. But surely that beats the alternative, which has essentially just been losing that talent for good. Whatever Bungie tries to build next, and whatever PlayStation greenlights, it will be weaker for all of these losses. And then there's the wider PlayStation Live service strategy, which suffers, which will be trusted less now. Or, and this is the turn in this video that I maybe forecasted earlier, the old strategy would have suffered a lot, but the old strategy is just that, the old one. We've been a little dishonest, but hey, it's for the sake of storytelling. You see, we didn't give you everything from the Nishino interview earlier, and that's because when you see what he spends most of his answer on, it explains exactly what he means by revitalizing live service. Remember, he framed first-party and third-party content as the way to revitalize the market. And to do that, he points to two specific games. Those are Genshin Impact and Marvel Tokon Fighting Souls. Genshin was, of course, a PlayStation exclusive for 4 years. And Xbox reportedly missed out on the deal there. But it's a perfect example of a live service that works for PlayStation. PlayStation collects 30% of all revenue generated in the game on their platform. And that, of course, includes payments in return for in-game currency in free live service games. In the interview, Nishino talks about running a promotion for 10% more in-game currency if you bought it on a new PS5. And I think that's just a perfect example of why it's so good for Sony. Think about it, right? No game development costs, no game development salaries to pay. Just, keeping the integration working and the game supported. It's basically free money, unlike any of that money you would have got from Destiny, because you have to spend a lot of money to get that money. Very much not the case in something like Genshin Impact. That philosophy pays off with Tokon as well. It's the next PlayStation Live service game, and Nishino is 100% wearing his marketing hat here rather than talking about the further out things like, say, Fair Games or Horizon Hunters Gathering, that I think most of us kind of presume are a bit doomed. But there is then a second piece, and that is Arc System Works. And I bring them up because they're privately held, they're the people who make Marvel Tokon Fighting Souls, And they're not owned by Sony. That means that Sony doesn't have to pay those salaries, doesn't have to pay those pensions. Yes, they pay money to that company to develop the game, and the company will pay for all of those things, but for Sony, it's pretty great. They just get to be a publisher who contracts out an outside team to make a game that suits their historical strengths. It's fantastically risk limited for them, because if the whole thing goes foobar, they can cut it off, and the bag they're left holding is a lot cheaper than, say, the Bungie bag. And it's exactly what they did with their biggest live service success, Helldivers 2. Arrowhead's not a Sony-owned studio, that was just a regular old publishing contract. And doing it that way strips out so much risk from PlayStation's side. Tokon can bomb, and yes, it will reflect badly in PlayStation, but all they lose is their investment. There's no ongoing stock vesting, no severance, none of the bad press from laying off all those staff. And if it pays off, they win anyway, through, of course, the sales and the ongoing cut. And so this focus, as we see in these two games, is our clearest picture of what a new PlayStation Live service strategy could look like. And it's very different to the one that Jim Ryan kicked off. We've been holding to the principle that Marathon has to live so that audiences will trust that PlayStation Live services like Tokon will be supported. If PlayStation cuts investment, then so will players. But based on this interview, what they're going to do is just mitigate risk. There will be platform landlordism to keep revenues high, and of course, outside developers to limit their costs. In-house live services aren't dead yet. Guerrilla's Horizon game and Fair Games are still going, as is Marathon. But as PlayStation reckon with years of bets that haven't paid off, exemplified by, of course, the promises that Bungie's leadership made to PlayStation, and how they very much didn't come true. While the skullduggery may have been done by Bungie leadership, it is, and we must always remember, the staff who are paying the price here. And that matters to you, because the Destiny team spent over a decade running one of the biggest live services on the planet. That means that they learned the most important and hardest type of lesson. Real ones that were painful because they were goddamn expensive. And that's the type of lesson that someone actually learns from in a way that sticks, because the stakes were real. The success was real. The failure was real. That's the experience PlayStation's live service future actually needs to be successful, and it's the experience they just cut loose. Because PlayStation won't carry a single cost it doesn't have to, even if doing so may sabotage their future. Because that's tomorrow's problem. The market's responding to today. As if to validate that closing statement that they won't carry a cost they don't have to, well, they've killed physical discs. Actually killed them. And you can learn about it in this video next.